Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here with another episode of the Reunion Podcast. This is the podcast where I go back in time and find friends and almost famous people from high school, college, grad school, junior achievement, any place back in time where maybe we haven't kept in touch as much as we thought we would. So that is what I'm doing today. I am joined by my good friend Carla. Now, I was just going to say Congleton, but your last name, I don't think I've ever pronounced it. Is it Oetinger?
It's Oetinger, but
Oetinger.
You can say whatever you want.
That's very generous of you. Is that because people have butchered the name over the years? You're just...
Sure. I mean, I teach elementary school, so a lot of times I'm just Mrs. O.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. And whatever. Right. It's fine. I'm totally okay with it.
All right. Carla Oetinger.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. And for those of you who do not know, Carla and I first met in West Palm Beach on the campus of Palm Beach Atlantic back when it was still a college.
Yes. It wasn't quite as fancy as it is now.
Certainly not as fancy. When you consider Kathy Dorm.
No, that was frightening.
Yeah.
But you made it. You need a t-shirt that says, I stayed in Kathy Dorm and survived.
Yep, I survived Kathy Dorm. And what's funny is I have no idea where my copy of that shirt is, but I've seen some people that kept it. It should have never been worn. It should have just been placed in a case as a, souvenir type thing.
Right.
But that building is still going strong. And,
hard to believe.
Yep. And Palm Beach Atlantic, now a university, growing. It's got a ton more stuff there than when we were there. So back then, now when I got there, the Honorable Claude H. Ray was president. Right. And the plan for that school was that it would never get more than 1,500 in attendance.
Oh, I did not know that.
No?
No.
You weren't part of the master plan meetings?
I guess not. I've always been on the outside looking in.
You were a part of leadership, weren't you?
Well, I suppose so. I was a RA and that sort of thing. But like I said, I don't know. I don't know if you would call me official leadership or not. Maybe it was just on the fringes.
Okay. All right. Now, don't want to embarrass you anymore.
No, it's fine. I mean, I don't know. I'm not embarrassed. I think it's funny.
All right. And so now I want to ask the question, did we graduate the same year, 1989?
So I graduated in 1990. And the reason why I did, I think we were the same. We started at the same time. I double majored in elementary education and English. And so I was there an extra year. So I graduated in 90.
All right. See, you were smart.
Yeah.
People like me just did it one degree at a time.
The nice thing was in that 1990 year, that's when I roomed with the one and only Amy Coons. So that was pretty worth it.
Oh, yes. Good old Amy. Rest in peace.
That's right.
So let's talk about the reason that we hooked up today is I'm going to be making a trip to Pittsburgh later this week, and you just returned from Pittsburgh.
I did.
And I thought you had some great pictures.
Thank you.
And so my first thought, of course, was to say, tell me where to go.
Right.
But then I thought, then I'm just going to get a list of stuff and I won't get the story as to why I should go visit these places. So I thought, let me get you on the Zoom here and let's talk about where to go and why to go. But let's first start with why a trip to Pittsburgh?
That's a great question. So I live near Cincinnati, and my son, his name is Riley. My son is 18. he has wanted to go to Pittsburgh for quite a few years, actually. We talked about going prior to the pandemic, and he really wanted to go. And I guess I'll get into why when the pandemic came, that really put that plan to, there he is, put that plan to the side for a while. And then we were finally able to go. And my son Riley is on the autism spectrum. And so he has very specific interests, very specific things that he enjoys. And one of the things that he really has enjoyed his whole life is Mr. Rogers. And he was very anxious to go and visit the place that Mr. Rogers grew up and where he did the show, and just key places that that are all about Mr. Rogers. And so our trip was very much a specific type of trip where we weren't really looking at things like the Steelers or the Pirates. We were looking at Pittsburgh's friendliest neighbor, Mr. Rogers.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, has he always had the interest in Mr. Rogers? Usually that's something that starts early in life when they're watching, kids don't watch cartoons anymore. So how did he get into watching Mr. Rogers?
I kind of was thinking about that. I don't remember exactly when he started, but he was pretty young. And I think one of the characteristics of someone who's on the spectrum is that they sometimes need to be taught social expectations and social cues and things like that. And so as a mom, the show is a really good venue for having conversations about how to act and how to talk to people and how to interact with people. And I also think that there's something about the there's a setup to the show. There's always like a consistent way, like a format that they follow where, he does the same greeting all the time. They take the time to maybe talk to someone in the real world, and then they do the imaginary world. And I think something about the consistency of how the show was done was appealing. But Riley's liked him for a really long time, like ever since he was a little guy. So on a side note, a really interesting thing is, so Mr. Rogers turned out to be Riley's first grief experience, which sounds kind of funny, but he would watch clips on the computer all the time, even as a little guy. And he went through a period where he was really quiet, and obviously something was wrong or disturbing him, and he was very quiet and he wasn't saying much. And this was probably about the time that he was getting ready to go into second grade or something like that. And we were really worried because he was normally, talkative and, vocal. I don't know if talkative is maybe the right word, but he was very vocal and energetic and all that. And his energy was low. He wasn't really doing anything. And come to find out that he had found out through the process of watching these clips and things on the computer, and he was pretty savvy with the computer. He found out that Mr. Rogers died in 2003. So that it was like he didn't know that Mr. Rogers wasn't alive anymore. Like he thought Mr. Rogers was alive from seeing these clips and stuff. So it was his first kind of real experience with, I guess, grieving. It was very upsetting for him.
So I have two nephews that they're on the scale, but they're not, like, I don't know how far on the scale they are. My oldest nephew is, for all purposes, normal. He's got some social anxiety issues, but is fully functional. The youngest nephew is also, if you were to just see them on a regular basis, you wouldn't know it. It's seeing them on a daily basis where you see their quirks and you see how they
Right.
process things. So how far is Riley on the spectrum?
Probably similar to what you just described.
Okay.
I think if you look at Riley, you wouldn't necessarily know it. But if you interact with him on a daily basis, then maybe that comes out. But Riley's always exceeded expectations. And so like he didn't talk when he was really little, he really didn't talk at all. And spent a lot of time screaming. But as he got older, his speech was more scripted, like things that he would hear on videos and things like that that he would use as a means of communication. But then he probably around third grade or so is when he started using more just more spontaneous type of conversation. And now at this point, I don't think that people would realize just looking at him or maybe even talking with him. But certain things might give it away the more time you spend with him.
Okay.
He just graduated from high school in 2021. He was in all regular classes and things like that. And did well. So like I said, maybe it's not immediately obvious.
Right. Now, did he do any extra stuff involved in any of the extracurricular stuff?
Initially, no, but I kind of encouraged him to try getting involved with the theater program because I felt like that's a really great environment. I mean, everyone in the theater is very accepting of, people from all different backgrounds and things typically. And also, I just thought it'd be a fun way to be involved. And he enjoyed doing that. Unfortunately, the pandemic came and he was able to do some things like help paint sets and things like that. So he had a lot of enjoyment doing that. And then the other thing was he really loved going to the athletic games, like being in the stands and cheering and that sort of thing. He loved doing that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, how much of being a teacher, being in education, how much did that prepare you for living the life of Riley, as we say?
Right. I think it was a great preparation. And also, I mean, it certainly wasn't like when he was first diagnosed. It's not like we still had a lot we needed to learn and a lot we needed to research and all of that. So it wasn't like I walked into it with all kinds of knowledge at my belt, but I think I knew where to find it. And I also was surrounded by other teachers and professionals that could help me, support me and support us and help find that information. And so I also think too, as a teacher, just being really aware of, I just have an understanding of where he was at and what I felt like he needed and any kind of therapy that he received. Because when he was little, he received speech therapy and occupational therapy, things like that. We were very committed to replicating the things that we saw those people doing on a daily basis in our home. So I think being a teacher helped me be more committed to that process of replicating those interventions. Early intervention is really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Didn't mean to take that big of a left turn for you, but
no, I think I started the turn, but it's a good turn to talk about. I think it's important for people every child is different, but maybe the journey can be at least similar, or there's something about the journey that someone can relate to.
All right. So I want to start off the Pittsburgh journey with the letter that you shared with me that Riley wrote. And he writes, Mr. Rogers, I sincerely cannot thank you enough for being one of the major parts of my life all these years. From childhood to adulthood, Your love and just you as a person means so much to me, and I'm simply beyond grateful for that. Love, Riley Oetinger. That was pretty interesting. Now, it's been 9 years since Mr. Rogers passed, and I don't know how
Right.
long since he had found out. What prompted him to just write this letter?
Well, that we went to one of the first places we went to when we did our trip, our little vacation together, is we went to Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is where Mr. Rogers grew up. And it's also the home of St. Vincent College. And at St. Vincent College, in addition to things like spring training for the Steelers, is also the Fred Rogers Center. And the Fred Rogers Center has displays and exhibits of things from the show, artifacts from the show, sweaters and puppets and things of that nature. And then also a guest book. And that's what Riley wrote in the guest book. I said, well, here's a guest book. You can write what you want. And that's what he chose to write, to write. So all that comes from just a sincere sort of love and appreciation that he's had for many years. And it was neat for him to have the opportunity to write that.
All right. So that was the very first place you went.
Yes, we went to the Fred Rogers Center in Latrobe. While we were in Latrobe, we also did a couple other things. Like there's a Latrobe Art Center that Mr. Rogers' sister helped found. And we went there, and we even visited the cemetery. And I let Riley I said something to Mr. Rogers myself there at the mausoleum, and I let Riley have a chance to, I went to the car and let Riley have a chance to spend some time there if he wanted. And we talked a little bit about what he said. It was kind of along the same lines of just thanking him for being so important to him. And also he thanked Mr. Rogers' wife as well. So it was pretty cool.
All right. So when I think about the Fred Rogers Institute, I'm assuming it's, an homage to his show and to some other things, but what are the types of things that you can do there?
Really, it's about looking at the different exhibits, which are a number of things. Like there's a lot of video clips that you can watch. For example, there's a really famous speech that Mr. Rogers gave to in Congress where he was advocating for money for public television. And that's a really cool speech to watch. There's another speech where he spoke at, I think it was the Emmys, and it's interesting to watch. Like we had all these, people that we think of as celebrities, and had them all very quietly all just stop and have a moment of silence for all the people that helped love them into the place where they were in that moment. And that's cool because all of these people all sort of paused and stopped and are visibly moved. There's just something about Mr. Rogers where he can get to the heart of both the simple and the deep and profound things of life. So anyway, you can see those video clips. You can see some photos and things in his writing where he was writing songs, things like that. It's really just a place that has it's an attempt to show the influence of his family and then the impact of the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to give people perspective, Latrobe is about an hour. What is it? West of Pittsburgh or east of Pittsburgh?
Kind of southeast.
Southeast. Okay.
Yeah, of Pittsburgh. That was our first stop, and we had a really good time. Really good time there. We didn't do everything related to Mr. Rogers, but that one pic there. So that's Riley looking at a video clip from the show. I'm talking about the pictures. And then we saw what he wrote in the guest book. And then there's a picture of Riley and I with at a bench. There's a statue at a bench in a park in Latrobe, where, we sat and we took our picture. And of course, we had our matching Mr. Rogers t-shirts on. So that was our first day of our trip. The next day, we went to an amusement park called Kennywood. I'm not sure if I sent you a picture that was Kennywood related. I don't think I did. Kennywood is sort of like, Kings Island or Cedar Point or that sort of thing. And we went there for part of the day, and we went to the things that Riley's interested in. And one of the things that Riley's interested in besides Mr. Rogers is he really likes Thomas the Train. And so there's a Thomas section, and that was the big draw. So we went there and did some rides that were sort of Thomas themed. And we did some other things too while we were there, but we weren't there a super long time. And then after that, we went to the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. And I think there's a picture of Riley with some dinosaurs. And the purpose to go there was Mr. Rogers had done an episode at the History Museum. And so we went there to see the dinosaurs ourselves. And that's also really fun to do. There's a lot of really cool sections there. I would definitely recommend the History Museum to someone visiting.
All right. And those are actually closer to Pittsburgh than
yes,
Latrobe.
definitely. That's much closer.
All right. So I'm looking here. I'm Googling and stuff and checking the maps and
right.
all of that. As we go through, I saw the website for Kennywood's amusement park.
Right.
Well, that's a pretty big amusement park.
It is a big amusement park. It was pretty fun, and it seems like it's a very popular place. So definitely, if the family's coming to Pittsburgh, that's probably a place to plan to go. And then in the Mr. Rogers theme, we also went around the same day that we went to the Carnegie Museum. We also stopped real quick at WQED because that's where Mr. Rogers filmed the show. And we also went to the house that Mr. Rogers lived when that's closer to like downtown Pittsburgh. So there's Riley at WQED.
Yep. So we actually filmed at the station. Now, did he do everything literally around this area? Like, I mean, nowadays we know that everything's either filmed in Hollywood or, at one of the major stations, or not stations, but, they make these movie sets for stuff.
Right.
And very few things are filmed on location.
So Mr. Rogers was filmed mostly at WQED. It's a public television station. And for certain visits that they did, like if they went to another location, it was just for the day and they took their public television crew with them. But most of the show was done on site at WQED. So kind of a different vibe, I guess, because it's a public television venue.
Right.
It's a little bit different.
Well, and it was 50 years ago.
Right.
Even longer, I think.
Right. Long time ago. So then after that, one of the things that we did was sort of my choice, but Riley was really into it and really engaged, was we went to the Andy Warhol Museum. It's called the Warhol, and it's in downtown Pittsburgh. And I know, like, in the pictures that you have, there's a picture of him in front of the building, but there's also a picture of him. He's got his hand reaching out. Yep, that's the Warhol. And then each floor is dedicated to different like a chronological timeline of Andy Warhol's life. So the very top floor, there's 7 floors. The very top floor is sort of early life. and then you work your way down each floor to kind of get more and more into maybe the things that we're more familiar with. So there's Riley, and he's one of the things, of course, they talked about how Warhol used, made those prints, and then he would do a repetition of repeating the same image over and over. Like there's an Elvis that's repeated like 11 times or something, and it's this huge mural. But this picture is the Campbell's soup can, and it's showing what the print would feel like, the lithograph or whatever it is, the thing that he's using to make the print with. And then so Riley's just kind of feeling what that's like and all of that. But that was a really great place to go and really interesting. And we spent quite some time there. Very different, but and I was having a conversation with a friend of ours, Alan, about what is art, this, the soup can, all that kind of stuff. Like it pushes the boundaries of what is art, who decides what it is. But for Riley, he was really into it, and so was I. We had a good time talking to each other about what we saw and all of that. So I would recommend going to the Warhol visitor like yourself.
All right. Well, our friend Alan, yes. So he would definitely be somebody to have that conversation with. What is art? Because
Right.
I should probably do a link to some of his stuff.
Yeah, the wine foil art and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
now, did you have to talk Riley into seeing the Warhol, or did had he already done his stuff, so he was kind of okay with it?
He had done his stuff, but also as part of, Riley took several art classes when he was in high school. He already knew who Andy Warhol was. And he's interested because Andy Warhol and Mr. Rogers, I think that they weren't in the same, they weren't exactly the same age, but they're like maybe just a year or two apart from each other. And so they're kind of celebrated in the town, in Pittsburgh, kind of equally. So I think Riley was interested because of that, and because of he already had a knowledge of Andy Warhol anyway. So I didn't really have to talk him into it. But I did kind of make it like, hey, this is something I'd really like to do. What do you think? And he was totally on board with that. So.
All right. Well, good, because when you look up, the top attractions or top touristy things to do around Pittsburgh, the Andy Warhol Museum is in there. The Carnegie Museum of Natural History is in there. So
right.
You got two of them.
Got two of them. So we did that. And another kind of key thing that we did is the Heinz History Center, which is probably also on your list.
That's not my list. I'm just
on the list.
On Google.
The Google list. The Heinz History Center. The Heinz History Center has so there's a Mr. Rogers section there, but there's also other things. So of course, Heinz ketchup, the Heinz company. There's a whole Heinz section, so you can learn all about traveling salesmen that went around with the pickles and all of that stuff. So, and there's some, interesting and kind of amusing things in the Heinz section. There's a World War II section that we really enjoyed looking at. Riley was interested in that. He kind of chose the things that we did while we were in that center. And again, having studied some things in high school, he was interested in World War II. And also he specifically requested to go to, there's a section that's, I think it's called From Slavery to Freedom. But it's about, it starts with just the kind of honoring the African heritage, and then kind of I don't want to say graphically because it's what, but honestly portraying things like, there's a section where you walk in and it's sort of like the boat, the slave ship, and there's manacles and things of that nature. I found it disturbing, but important. Like it's an important thing for people to walk through and experience.
It's odd that you say that. So we recently had to go to St. Louis. Again, another sad occasion where a family member had passed, and we did have some time, after the funeral, after the receptions, memorials, and Kim and I did make it to the St. Louis Arch. And I was actually surprised how much they had incorporated Black history and slavery in the Arch. And it's actually, I don't want to say interesting, but it's comforting, reassuring, all those types of adjectives to see that, there are places in this country where we are remembering stuff.
Right.
As you mentioned, in a real, sometimes sobering way.
I think that's the right word, is sobering. And there's a process that you go through as you work your way through the section where it's kind of chronological in that, you would see something about plantation life and the selling of other people. And then eventually things like the Underground Railroad, the participation in the Civil War, all kinds of stuff. And it is done in a way that is both respectful and sobering. And I was really glad that Riley wanted to see that. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing to walk through and talk about all this stuff. One of the things that I don't know if you noticed, but there's so Riley and I have these matching shirts, and it says, the shirts say, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. But the picture is from a pretty famous episode of Mr. Rogers, where Mr. Rogers is sitting and he has his feet in a kiddie pool, and there is an African-American guy who's on Mr. Rogers a lot. His name is Francois Clemens, and on the show, he plays like a police officer. But Mr. Rogers has Francois put his feet. They both put their feet in the kiddie pool together. And this is at the time when, and if you watch like any of the Mr. Rogers like documentaries or the movies that have been out, this is a time when Mr. Rogers is fully aware that there are people that are forbidding Blacks from being in the pool or purposely throwing chemicals in the pool to get them out, that sort of thing. And Mr. Rogers like purposefully was kind of like Jesus and the washing of the feet, except he didn't come right out and say on the show, hey, this is Jesus washing the disciples' feet. But that's what this is, because they put their feet in and then he helped dry off Miss Francois Clemens' feet. And it was a really important act for kids and families. And so Riley and I have talked about that a lot. Like he has a very deep understanding of the reason why Mr. Rogers is so popular is the empathy and the respect for other people. So.
All right. Very nice. I did not pay attention to the shirt, but I just did now. And
okay.
I do have, there is one of the pictures that you sent where you can see it on Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll try to find another picture to go along with this podcast of the full shirt, so that people can see that.
Absolutely. So anyway, so the Heinz Center, Heinz History Center was a great place to go. There's more there. I'm telling you the kind of the highlights of what we saw. And then kind of as an aside, this is only the kind of thing that only Riley and I would do. But he was interested, and because he was interested, I was like, sure, let's do it. Because he wanted this trip, and so he got to decide our destinations. One of the episodes of Mr. Rogers went and got a pair of shoes at a local shoe store. So we went to the shoe store. It turns out it's a sixth generation in the family shoe store, and it's the oldest family-run shoe business, like continuously family-run shoe business in the United States. And Riley got to pick out a pair of shoes and buy a pair of shoes. So he did that. And then we went to north of Pittsburgh. There's a city called Saxonburg, and we went to Hotel Saxonburg for lunch or dinner, I guess, lunch, dinner. Because there was an episode that was about what is it like at a restaurant? And we went there because that's where Mr. Rogers filmed the kitchen and the restaurant and all of that. So we did some of the usual destinations. And then we did some ones that Riley knew of, and it was fun to go there. Like when we went to the shoe store, he talked to people there, and they were showing the pictures. And Riley was like, yeah, that's Buzz. And I mean, I don't know who these people are in this family, but Riley knows. So yeah, it was all kind of determined by what he wanted to see and what he wanted to do. And those are the main things that we saw and we did while we were in Pittsburgh. I am afraid of driving. I don't like driving. And so I found driving in Pittsburgh to be challenging. There's a lot of acute angles, like you're driving and you have to turn a really sharp turn, or there's a lot of hills, or things aren't very clearly marked.
Well, Pennsylvania is one of those areas, where the streets were kind of built in that masonry way, where those sharp angles and the protractor curves and stuff like that. So I could see that.
It was stressful. And I mean, I'm not into driving anyway. And so that was challenging. And then the big thing in Pittsburgh is there's Mount Washington, and the most direct route to go from like a little south of downtown into the main part is tunnels. Well, I can't do a tunnel. I watched a YouTube video of someone driving through the Liberty Tunnel.
How to drive through a tunnel?
Yeah, to drive through the Liberty Tunnel, which is like over a mile long or something. And I thought, well, I'm going to watch this and see if I can do this. And I felt, not a full-blown panic attack, but I felt my heart race just watching the video of the guy driving through the tunnel. So I actively avoided the tunnels, and I drove out of my way so that I wouldn't have to be in the tunnel. But probably other people would be totally fine with it. It freaked me out.
I would think that would be part of the experience. I mean, I'm sure people were like, you got to go through the tunnel.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And I'm totally okay with the fact that I didn't go through the tunnel. And I don't even want to be a passenger in the tunnel. Like if I have to be, I will, but I'll put myself on the floor of the vehicle and close my eyes. And then when it's over with, so yeah, that's my plan for the tunnel.
Yeah, we'll just give you a little pill like they would do for Mr. T and the A-Team, right?
Right. Now, one thing that we didn't get to do is we were scheduled to go on a trolley tour of the city, and the trolley got canceled. But one of the things it was supposed to do was take us up something called the incline, and it takes you up Mount Washington, and it's supposed to be a really cool view of the city, but we didn't get a chance to do that. And I would have done that. But it just didn't happen for us.
Well, I can tell you this. I'm sitting here going through the list of things that you've told me about, and I'm going for work.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out which one of these will I be able to squeeze in. So I'll have to figure it out and see if I can knock one of these out on this trip. And it sounds like I'll have to plan another.
Maybe. I didn't realize until we a couple times we took a Lyft ride, and we had one driver that was pretty talkative, and I guess I'm just out of it. Maybe because I'm in my own education world and I don't know the corporate world as well. But I didn't realize that Facebook and some other TikTok, some other social media people have headquarters, or at least one of their headquarters in Pittsburgh. It's very much a technological center. I didn't know that.
I think there's a lot of things like that. Pennsylvania in general, I didn't realize was home to a lot of these places. You hear about Hershey, Pennsylvania. Right. And, we know Philadelphia, from the history stuff, but, outside of that, no, I didn't think of anything, major in Pittsburgh besides the Steelers, like you said.
Right. So if you're going there for work, I imagine you'll probably be downtown, and probably maybe the easiest thing that you would have an opportunity to do would be the Heinz History Center, because it's right in the heart of downtown, like right near the water where you cross. Like there's kind of like the North Shore of Pittsburgh, and then there's like the kind of that triangular area that's kind of like the heart of Pittsburgh, and it's right in that. So you probably would have the easiest time doing that.
All right.
So
we'll see.
I think even for people who aren't going there for the Mr. Rogers Trail, there is a thing, like you can look up online. There's like something that's called the Fred Rogers Trail, and it lists all the places that you can see. But even if you weren't doing that, I think there's a lot of interesting things to see and do there. I would highly recommend the Warhol, and I would recommend the Heinz History Center, maybe the top two non-sporting things.
Well, number 2 on this list that I'm looking at, and I'm not going to name the list because I don't want people yelling at me. Right. Mount Washington is actually number 2 on the list.
Right. Mount Washington is, that's what the tunnel goes through, and that's what the incline is. You're riding the top of it and seeing everything. So, yeah.
All right. And it's interesting. So, of course, the list is probably highly slanted towards Pittsburgh because they're listing most of the things that you have mentioned, except for there it is, Mr. Rogers Memorial Statues all the way down at 29.
They don't have their priorities in line. No.
Yeah, but it just mentions the statue. It doesn't mention anything else.
Right. And there's really a lot that you can see if you really want that Mr. Rogers experience.
Yep. But the statue is above the Heinz Memorial Chapel.
Okay. And this is kind of as an aside too, so Riley and I both don't really like a long road trip. So I purposely planned our trip. Like we could have probably done Pittsburgh in 3 days, but I purposely stretched out the experience so that we would not feel rushed, that we would take our time, that we would stop. So even on the way back from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati, we didn't go straight through. We stopped halfway through and spent the night, and we went to Wheeling, West Virginia, to this toy and train museum. So it wasn't a marathon, I guess is what I'm saying. We made it comfortable for us.
Very nice. So let me ask this, and forgive me if I don't know my own history with you, but how did you end up in Cincinnati? Is that where you just ended up after PBA, or are you from there? Because
no, not from here. The story is, so after PBA, I grew up in Southwest Florida near Fort Myers, and my husband and I met there, and my husband actually went to Asbury Seminary near Lexington in Wilmore, Kentucky.
Okay.
And he was at the seminary for about 3 years. And prior to going to the seminary, when he graduated from college, it was with a computer programming degree.
Really?
And Randy was in the seminary, and we were in debt, and I was subbing, but I couldn't find a regular teaching job. And eventually Randy stopped going to seminary, and he found a job in Cincinnati through through a friend at a computer programming company. So wasn't ever really our plan to be here, but here we are all those years later.
All these years later, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, just thought I had to ask because, I always end up, not knowing things of,
right.
And the reason I asked, so part of it is because, my wife, Kim, is from Ohio.
Okay.
And of course, she always gets frustrated that, I have lived in Florida pretty much most of my life, but I know a ton of people from or in or around Ohio. So I had people from Dayton and Toledo and Columbus and Cleveland. And it's just, she just finds it fascinating that I know so many people from Ohio.
Right. So yeah, we're Kentucky. Northern Kentucky, across the river from Cincinnati. But yeah, that's how we ended up
But you
here.
say you're from Ohio because you don't want to say you're from Kentucky? Is that what happens?
No, I don't really want to. I probably shouldn't say this on your nonpartisan show. I don't really want to associate myself with Mitch McConnell. That's a whole other thing. But I'd say it just for people, like a frame of reference. Like most people don't realize that Kentucky is across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. But if I say Cincinnati, it's the general.
There you go.
It's the general area.
All right.
Even though I want to ditch Mitch.
Okay. So you're an Ohio girl. That's all you need to say.
Yeah. I'm a Florida girl.
Okay, that's even better.
So I identify as a Florida girl, but I'm living in
so here's the problem, though.
Northern Kentucky.
That is some sort of path. If you grew up in Southwest Florida.
Yes.
I hate to say it this way, and people from Ohio are going to be very upset with me. I'm like, but if you've ever lived, let alone grew up in Florida, why would you ever move?
That's what people say to us all the time.
Cincinnati, Ohio.
I will say that for Riley, it's been a really great, a great environment, and we've been really fortunate with the schools and with the community and all of that. But I do have a dream of one day going back to Florida.
You're here.
So
we welcome you back.
So I'm a Florida girl. I identify as a Florida girl, but I am currently living in Independence, Kentucky.
All right. Well, tell the hubby there's tons of computer jobs down here. So
yeah.
I don't know if teaching pays as well as up there too. That may be a problem.
The biggest issue is I'm so close to retirement that I'm kind of locked into my teaching job right now.
Gotcha.
And so I don't want to mess up that. But once I'm eligible for that, it opens up a lot of possibilities.
Hey, got a place down here in Del Boca Vista waiting for you.
That's great.
All right. Well, Carla,
I'll have dinner at 4:30 and play shuffleboard
with the $2 coupon.
That's it. The early bird special.
Oh my goodness. Well, Carla, thank you very much for spending some time with me and chatting. And I'm actually quite pleased the way we did this. I, thought we'd just chat about, places to visit around Pittsburgh, but, talking about your son and Fred Rogers and stuff, that's, I hope we'll find that as interesting as I did.
I don't know if anyone will find it interesting, but it was certainly nice to talk to you about it. And hopefully somebody will enjoy it. We'll see.
They will. So, folks, that is my conversation with Carla Oetinger.
Good job.
And you know her as Congleton from Palm Beach Atlantic.
That's right.
Hopefully you sailfish will listen to this and
Right. You
take
wish you were a fish.
I have not said that ever since leaving.
Right. I mean, why would you?
Oh my goodness gracious. Folks, thank you very much for downloading and hopefully subscribing to the show, where you can get great interviews like this with all of my famous friends. And if you've caught this one for the very first time, head over to unclemarv.com, where you can see other episodes, and you can click on the follow button. And anytime a show pops up in Google Podcast or Apple Podcast or Spotify or iHeart, or if you want to follow on the YouTube, whenever we do a video chat, you can see that as well. And hopefully we'll have a lot more great and interesting stories down the road. So for today, on behalf of my good friend Carla, thank you very much for tuning in. That'll do it. And we'll see you next time.